planet, okay, got it. So this planet, so I just want to make sure, are you seeing my presentation and can you hear me okay? Can anybody?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I can see it and hear you.
Yes,
Okay,
we got
perfect.
it. Yeah.
So after being in so many places around the world, this planet always surprised me with new beautiful places. And I have to say that Florida is one of these places that I never thought before coming here that I will be so interested in visiting and in researching. To me, the first time that I went to the field here to see pines and palms growing together was particularly interesting and rare to me because I have seen pines up north and palms all over the tropics, but to see them in one single place and the way they are or the way they grow here was something unique that I have never seen before. So today, I like to talk to you. Okay, let's see if I can move these. Okay. So this is the outline of my talk. And what I'm going to do is to give you an introduction to Florida. I want to tell you why is Florida so special and what's going on in Florida in terms of like changing landscapes and geology and how Florida is so dynamic and diverse, okay? Then I want to go and talk further about the place that we are interested in for this particular talk that is like the greater Everglades area, including Fakahatchee and Big Cypress National Forest. And then I'm gonna finally introduce orchids and some of the orchids that you could see at this time of the year, flowering or not flowering. And the last thing that I'm gonna do is I am gonna talk about some of the research that has been going on here in Florida during the last decade. So Florida is this like really diverse natural area. It is the only place in the United States that where you can find orchids that are epiphytes. That means orchids that grow on trees, on other trees, but they don't parasite them. They just live there. They just take the nutrients out of the rain that goes on the trunks when it rains, or from the horizontal precipitation or the mist that goes into the day-to-day. So that's how orchids can actually take nutrients and water. And the conditions that we have in Florida, particularly from Central Florida down, make this part of the United States unique for orchids and other plants and animals to grow. So this is a diverse place where you are gonna find mangroves, hardwoods, swamps, salt marshes, freshwater marshes, different communities of pinelands, etc. Okay, and on top of that, the geology and the geography of Florida is also really fascinating and is part of what how Florida is made out. Okay, so Florida not only is really diverse in terms of, again, of animals, plants, geography, etc., but it's also an ecosystem that is changing pretty fast. And this slide that I bring here, what I am showing you is how the wetlands in Florida used to be more or less 200 years ago, you know, and the wetlands, by the wetlands, I refer to all these areas that are in blue. And today you can see how this has transformed pretty dramatically. Why? Because of many natural processes that are occurring that have to be, but also not only natural, but also many things that are because of humans, like development, like the water that we need to supply to a growing population, water drainage, etc. So this is one of the examples that I wanted to bring here, but also I wanted to tell you about an example that a friend of mine, or that we were discussing with a friend of mine a few days ago. They have a cabin up north of Sarasota, and they have been visiting this cabin over the last 10 years. And in this period of time, this went to be a hardwood swamp. Okay, the cabin is by the ocean, I didn't say that. And in this period of time, this cabin went to be, as I say, to be in a hardwood swamp to completely become a place where you don't find hardwood anymore. Okay, and that has changed the whole community in there. It has changed the fish that they can find in there. It has changed the whole dynamic of water, from going to from having a lot of fresh water to having a lot of salt water, meaning that the ocean levels are rising, and the ocean levels are rising because of climate change. And this has changed the whole landscape and the whole communities, animal communities and plant communities in this specific area. So not only Florida is really diverse, a really dynamic place that is changing because of us and our intervention, but because also when the ocean retreats, or when the ocean comes into the shores, the landscapes are changing, but also there is a bunch of different things in Florida that are either rare or they are in danger. And this is something that you are gonna find in some other places in the United States, like the West Coast. But Florida has a lot of aquatic animals at risk, a lot of plants at risk, and we are gonna see why that could be in a little bit. Also, I wanted to tell you that many of these plants that are rare in Florida are rare because they are here by serendipity. They just got here by a hurricane or really high-speed winds. They shouldn't be here, but they are here. And that's a case for many, many orchid populations that are rare here. So Florida has 3 topographic zones. The highlands that you see in red here, and that we are not going to talk about them today because I'm focusing my talk in southern Florida, okay? And that includes the upland plains, which are flattened terrain that is above the sea level. And also, and so we are focusing on the yellow patches that you see here in this map, the lowlands, okay, that are at sea level that you see in green here. And then in southern Florida, we are also gonna have salt marshes, mangroves, and some estuaries. Okay. So let's move into southern Florida and their natural ecosystems. So the national park, the Everglades, was founded in 1947, and it has been protected as a national park. It was in 1997, was considered one of the parks with more, it was considered one of the parks that was more endangered in the United States, or had a really high percentage of disappearing. This park has been highly intervened during hundreds of years. It's nothing, as you're gonna see here, as it used to be, but it still is of a breathtaking beauty. It's not a place that you will want to visit in the summer because it's full of mosquitoes, super hot, and super humid. But as I say, it's a place that, like, one that you are not gonna find in any other place in the world. So this park, or this area, was or is part of the distribution, or is part where the Seminole Indians used to live, and they call it grassy waters. They still live there. The populations are very decimated. They have, they still live from hunting, fishing, and I mean, going through the waters and doing things that can be done within agriculture. They were, many of them went into a war with the government of the US. I don't remember the specific dates, because they wanted to move them to Oklahoma, but they resisted, and some of them have remained in there. So this is when I told you that the Everglades have changed dramatically over the years. This is what I meant too. So in the past, basically all the water that flow from the north to the south of Florida, and every river and waterway came and made this big river that is the Kissimmee River. It came and accumulated in this river that then went and pour all the water into the Okeechobee Lake. And from the Okeechobee Lake couldn't contain all that water, and all that water went south and formed what it was known, or what it is known as the Everglades. Okay, this is how this used to be, and it was huge. And today, this is what we have. This is what remains of the Everglades. We still have the Lake Okeechobee. There is some connection, but not much, between the small portion of the Everglades that we have today. Okay, this presentation is stuck. Okay. So how is the climate in the Everglades? I already told you that in summer it's super warm, super humid, and unfortunately is when all the life come to live and come to be in the Everglades. But many tourists don't really want to visit the Everglades at that time. Rainfall goes between May and October. The weather is a subtropical weather. You have dry winters, hot, humid summers, and there is, of course, like in the rest of Florida, tropical storms and hurricanes. So when I talk about the greater Everglades ecosystems, I'm talking I'm talking to about like the Fakahatchee Strand State Park, and I'm talking about the Big Cypress Swamp. All these are not necessarily connected, but they are so intricate in ways that one depends from the other in terms of like how the water flows, how the bird and animal populations are connected, and also how different ecosystems are in these three places. So at the Greater Everglades ecosystem, you can find pine lands, you can find tropical hardwood hammocks, where you are gonna find a bunch of different tropical trees mixed with temperate trees. You can also find the cypress swamps, very common in the Big Cypress National Forest. Freshwater marshes, something like these, that are located in the Everglades themselves. There is also big islands, or not really, like, can be big, but they don't have to be, don't necessarily are big, within the Everglades. And in those islands you can have, or you can find hardwood plants, and that vegetation can be so thick and is so humid there that many of the plants like orchids would like to grow there, because it has all the perfect conditions. It's super humid, since it's so thick in these islands, like the vegetation is so close together and so dense. There is some shade that is good for orchids. Orchids like shade. But we can also find in the coast of this, in the coastal parts of these areas, we can find mangroves, and we can also find some salt marshes. So let's talk a little bit about the Fakahatchee Preserve. The Fakahatchee is known as the Amazon of North America. In these parts, you can find panther, alligator, bird. Most of the plants are tropical, but you can also see that in the swamps, or you can see a mix or temperate, like oaks, temperate and tropical vegetation. Even though it doesn't seem like, and it seems remote and far away, and perhaps that has helped to preserve a little bit the orchid populations over there, it has quite an affectation by human disturbance. But still, as I say, many plant population and many animal population are still preserved in these parts. It's one of the most humid places in Florida too. It has a really deep sloughs where the water can flow through these like really deep sloughs. And besides the water being kind of in some of the parts of the preserve, besides the water being really deep, also the canopy, not in the winter as you see here, but also the canopy can be really close, can be really shaded. And this, as I say before, is a really good place, or is a really good combination for orchids to grow. So that's why I would like to say that in the whole Florida is the place where there is more epiphytic orchids than in any other place. On the other part, we have the biggest cypress and cypress swamps at the National Preserve, at the National Forest. This is a place that is hydrologically connected to the Everglades. It's way bigger than Fakahatchee. and it's connected to the Everglades, even though it's its own thing, its own ecosystems, its own ecosystem, because it can recharge the aquifer of the Everglades. So 60% of the flora that we can have in the Everglades and the and the greater Everglades area can be pine rockland habitat. We have also a lot of hardwood hammocks and big cypress, and mostly in Fakahatchee. As I said before, we have plants that are tropical and temperate origin, and that makes it really unique. And I want to say that probably many of the tropical plants that are in this part of Florida come mostly from islands and from the connection that Florida has with Mexico and other parts of Central America, that even though they are limited by water and by the oceans, many seeds and small seeds are adapted to travel when there is like hurricanes or when there is like these rapid winds. Also, birds can bring tropical seeds to these lands. So that's much of the origin of the tropical plants that we have and that we know here today come from some of these processes that I'm telling you here. I wanted to add here that since Florida is in a subtropical region, and again, even if, sorry, I am hearing something really strange. Okay, so I wanted to say that, yeah, the closeness to all of these places makes Florida this place where many other plants from the tropics can come and live and adapt, because they have, again, similar humidity, similar shade, they have protected understory and things like this. Okay, I don't really know what this is. Give me 1 second. Está pasando, ¿qué es eso? No está aquí. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. So I'm gonna give you, now that we are transitioning to talk about, let me see how much time do I have. Now that we are transitioning to talk about orchids, I'm gonna give you a brief introduction about how you will be able to identify orchids in your field trip this weekend. And I wanna tell you that orchids can have different habits. So they can be, and I talked about epiphytism already, they can be, and these are some of the ones that so the only ones that you are gonna find in Fakahatchee are either epiphytes or terrestrial plants, okay? Epiphytes are plants, again, are orchids that grow on other plants. In this case, they grow in these like big hosts, these big trees. They can also, orchids can also grow over stones or in really thin twigs in plants, and it depends on the species, it will grow or not in a twig. They can be terrestrial, and we have a ton of terrestrial orchids here. These terrestrial orchids actually go all over the, like some species are distributed all over the United States and also all over the neotropics. Okay, so it's easy to find those. Many of those are, or many of those, no, some of those can be introduced, or they are non-native from here, and they were introduced by humans, or again, by serendipity. And I also wanted to mention this. This is an orchid. It's an orchid from Australia, from the genus Rhizanthella. And that orchid, it grows berry in the dirt, but it's an orchid that doesn't use photosynthesis to produce food. Instead, gets all the energy and all the food from, sorry, gets the energy and all the food from organic matter that is decomposing. Okay. So again, you have to look for orchids on branches of big trees, on twigs of big and smaller trees like shrubs. You also have to be in all those places where there is not going to be water. You're not going to be walking over like in water. You have to look for rosettes like this with like big and long spikes like this. If you want to find an orchid, this orchid you're not going to find southern Florida. From Africa. Okay, so that's the first thing that you have to look for. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is these two types of grow. All plants are modular. Plants or modules mean that they are, the whole is made out of repeated parts. Okay, so in this case, this is the module of a sympodial orchid or a sympodial orchid, which means you are going to have a horizontal shoot or stem that is called a rhizome. You know, it goes either under the dirt, if you were like on the dirt, but this is mostly for epiphytic orchids. So it goes horizontally like this. Then you have a pseudobulb, which is also a stem that is modified and that stores water and nutrients, and it has the leaf. Okay, and if you start seeing this, you see that this pattern is going to repeat: rhizome, pseudobulb, leaf. Rhizome, pseudobulb, leaf. Rhizome, pseudobulb, leaf. And that is what we call a sympodial kind of growth. Okay, it goes like in a horizontal way and is repeated by this pseudobulb, rhizome, and stem. On the other hand, some other types of orchids that you can find are monopodial, meaning they just have one single, or they are compound of one single axis. And the modules here are a bit different. The modules are the leaf, the internode, the leaf, the internode, the leaf, and the internode. Okay, and those in this kind of orchids, what you are going to see is a single erect stem that can finish with a group of flowers that is called an inflorescence, or they can have inflorescence in the axil of these leaves. Okay, but in general, it's like a straight up stem that has these modules. So those are the types of growths that you have to be in the look for. This can be both in epiphytic, and they can also be in terrestrial orchids. But we are mostly talking here about epiphytic orchids, okay? Another characteristic that is pretty unique to, well, not only orchids, but in general to epiphytes is the roots, okay? For epiphytic orchids, you are always gonna find bare roots. They are attached. They can be really tightly attached to their host, okay? And they have this velamen. The velamen is basically this layer of dead cells that are recovering the actual live root. These cells act as a sponge. So when the water comes down from rain or from mist or from fog, this sponge absorbs all the water and nutrients from yeah, from all the water and nutrients from again rain, and storage it there until the plant can use it or need to use it, or until it rains again. Okay, so this is very common to see, and it's easy to distinguish also. I talked to you about the pseudobulbs when we were talking about sympodial. So we have these pseudobulbs that are always between the rhizome and the leaf, okay? And they are modified stems that actually storage water and nutrients, okay? Because orchids usually live in really rough condition. They have to wait for water to come down to get all the nutrients and everything that they need to be able to feed themselves, okay? So these are stems that are storage nutrients and water for them. And last but not least, you have to look for the orchid flower. The orchid flower, and I'm gonna accelerate a little bit because I'm taking a long time. The orchid flower takes or has 3 sepals, okay, which are these that are a little bit darker. They are lateral here and a dorsal one. They have 2 more like inside lateral petals, and a modified petal that is called a lip, okay, that is usually in this position, and that I like to call the landing place of like the insects that are coming to the center, to finally to the center of the flower, that is called a coleum, that has the male and female parts, okay? The male parts produce orchid pollinia, and you can see this in men. If you get to see a flower, you should look for the pollinia. The pollinia are these sacs that you see in here, and they have thousands and thousands of pollen grains. And when an insect comes to visit an orchid flower, the whole package of pollen or the whole package in these sacs is attached to the insect. And when this insect goes and visit other flower, this package is gonna be deposited in the female part of the flower, which is right here. Okay, so this is the male part of the flower where the orchid pollinia are, and this is the female part of the flower all the way down here where the pollinia are deposited. Another characteristic of orchids is the capsule. This capsule is basically a fruit that opens up, that dehisces, and releases really tiny seeds, dust-like seeds that float in the air. Nobody else, there is no other way of transportation that go through the air for orchid seeds. Well, they can go attached to you too, but that's not usually how it is. Okay, so again, I have said this tons of times. I want to say it again very quickly. Why are there orchids in Florida and epiphytic orchid in Florida? Because of the connections, because of the climate, because the soils are perfect and retain the perfect amount of moisture, not too moist, or they are sandy, and yeah, and they can drain really well, and orchids really like that, like really like water that comes and goes really fast, because there is a ton of diversity of habitats, as I showed you before, and because they find the pollinators that they need here, okay? So in Florida, there is around 118 species, only like 20 of them, or 20 genera. Lots of them are native. Most of them are native. Some have been naturalized already, and some are either escapes or invasive. In the area where you are gonna be is where epiphytic orchids are, or most of them. You can find some others in Central Florida too. There is about 16% genera and about 20 species. This changes a little bit according to taxonomy. And I'm using a specific type, like I using the World Flora Online taxonomy to count my species here. Most of them are rare. They are endangered locally. Most of them are widely distributed across the neotropics, I mean Central and South America, but locally they are pretty endangered because they were rare, or because they lost their habitat, or because poaching. Okay, they are so beautiful that people wanna grab them, they wanna take them, they wanna commercially exploit them, etc. So let's talk a little bit about some of the orchids that you can find here. I'm gonna tell you that this map is showing the counties where you can find this orchid, not where you can find it, where it has been collected and reported. And it's in like collections around the world, I guess. This is called Prostechea cochleata. You can see that in this plant, the leaf is not on the lower portion of the plant. It's called not restupinated. So it's on the upper portion of the plant. So it doesn't actually, it's not a land or yeah, forget about that, what I'm saying. It's locally common. And if you see, maybe you can see it in bloom in Fakahatchee if you are lucky. Okay, this is another Prostechea botiana. It's called the dollar orchid, and because it has like the color and the size of a dollar. It's a state listed plant, and you're not gonna see blooming this time. This is one of my favorites, Eunopsis utricularoides. It has this long, big two-lobe leaf, and you might be able to see it. It's also rare, and it's a twiggy phyte. This one likes to grow in really, really, really thin branches in small shrubs or trees. You're gonna see some epidendrum around there, maybe not flowering at this time of the year. This one is Epidendrum nocturnum, is very common all over the neotropics. It's scented at night. This is another epidendrum that you might see in flower, but it's rare, so probably not, but we see. Mike Owen knows where all these things are, so he can take you for certain to all these places. There is a trichocentrum. We'll talk a little bit more about this if I have time. Probably I won't have. Let me tell you about Campylocentrum, which is the ribbon orchid. The ribbon orchid can be confused with the ghost orchid, but this one has like really plain and really flattened roots. You are not gonna see leaves on this one. You are just gonna see the roots really attached to trees. Cyrtopodiums, or the cigar orchid, an epiphyte. Oncidium, I'm gonna have to go quickly through this. This one is another of my favorites. We are working on a project on this one here around Sarasota County. It's the butterfly orchid, and as you see, it's pretty common in almost all of Florida. The ghost orchid, I guess that you have heard a lot about this. It also doesn't have leaves. All that you are gonna see is the roots that you see like this, and it's really hard to see it in bloom and to see it in general because it's been poached and because of habitat lost. You also have the Galeandra vicarinata, the helmet orchid. This one is like also really rare to see. And then last, you might see some vanillas. Vanillas are hard to see in flower, are common to see with no flowers. The flowers last really, really short periods of time. They can be scented. And this one is the commercially vanilla that is used in many places around the world for bakery. And that is proposed in some of the literature that this was brought here from Mexican indigenous populations or for interchanges with Mexican indigenous populations. Okay, I have like 2 minutes to tell you that there is a ton of orchid research going on in Florida. Most of that research has been done in terrestrial orchids. There is a lot of taxonomical and systematic treatments, but there is also tons of ecological studies and conservation studies. I don't know if you heard of the Million Orchid project that is going down in Fairchild, but it's a beautiful project for doing augmentation and education and conservation. Lots of things have been done with the ghost orchid. There is a group of really dedicated scientists doing great work in conservation and basic science around the ghost orchid. And at Selby, we have done rare plant augmentation at the Everglades, and in particular, we have worked with Trichocentrum undulatum. We went to the field and collected seeds and fruits that we took to the in vitro cultivation and reproduced them massively. Then when we transplanted them to greenhouses and waited for them to adapt to the new conditions, to the outside environment. There was a now planting in July, and in July 2011 and 2012, from all those plants that were grown, approximately 200 plants made it and only 15% survive. Last but not least is the stuff that I have been doing with communities. The Friends of Little Salt Spring asked me this question. They wanted to know if Sacoila lanceolata is a species or a species complex because of the variation that, the morphological variation that these plants have. And that's, so we are doing a population genetic study with scientists from like different places in Florida, Northwestern University in Chicago. We have involved a bunch of people. We have collected in many different counties around the east and the west coast of Central and Southern Florida. And we are ready to start doing molecular analysis to understand these, and also to give a bunch of other recommendations about the conservation of the genetics in this plant. Okay. Because if they were different species, they will be, one of them will be, or several of them will be really rare. We have been also working with Bethany Burns in invasive species, mostly in Oceocledis maculata. And this, we use the collections from online repositories to understand the phenology of these plants. And we have gathered a ton of data, and this data are showing us really interesting results of how we know that the invasion was from Africa and it came to Brazil, and how the flowering patterns are changing across the neotropics. I don't have time to go over this, sorry. And last, I have a student from New College, Piper Cole, that is working on Encyclia tampensis, and she's trying to correlate the pollination and some of the pollination and reproductive characters and floral traits to the organisms that are below ground, or not below ground, in the roots of this epiphytic orchid, Encyclia tampensis. Okay, I guess that I talk too much, but I wanna conclude my talk saying that this is a unique, the Everglades are unique ecosystems in our planet, and the only place in the United States where epiphyte orchids can be found. This area is undergoing very incredible transformations. and most of the plants in there, and mostly orchids, are endangered, and we need strategies to protect it and their inhabitants. And with that, I want to finish, and thank you all for being here and listening to me today.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. It's very interesting.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
It goes to show you how important it is to preserve some of the remaining land that we have on these beautiful orchids that are out there. And if some of this land is all developed, they'll be lost forever. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say, if you want to share my PowerPoint, I can send it to you. Like, if some of the people can or want to look at those orchids more in detail and everything, I can provide those for you.
that would be great. We did have one chat message. One of your slides, it was early on, it mentioned Whitney et al. 2004. Does that mean that the percentages shown are from 2004? I think it just meant that that
Yes.
might have been when the slide was taken, possibly, or was it 2004?
Yeah, so to prepare for this presentation, I read some literature. The one that I like the most is this book that is for the Florida ecosystems. Yes, and you're right. That's pretty old. I wonder if it's 2004 or 2014. Now I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake. I will have to check. But in any case, yes, you're right. Probably these numbers, and I didn't think about that when I was doing this. Probably the numbers were when I cited the endangered species and the animals that are at risk and the plants that are at risk are pretty not up to date. So I apologize for that.
Okay. I had a question. Some of these, I know Selby's doing a lot of work to propagate some of these species to put them back out into the wild, but is anybody working on commercially propagating any of these species? They're so beautiful. I mean, they would have definitely have commercial applications.
Well, no, that I know of. I think that that's a great question, and I think that I know that Encyclia tampensis is commercially produced. So probably we could do a little bit more of research about who is producing it and how and where. That's the only one that I know that you actually have to even have a special permission because it's commercially exploited.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know who exactly is doing that. But I think that is a really good idea, and I think that some of these things can be used for both purposes, for reproducing, for conservation, and at the same time to be commercially exploited. Yeah.
Okay. We just have a couple of comments. Thank you very much, Tatiana. Splendid presentation. Thank you, Tatiana. Great presentation. Sean Patton wrote, having a commercial source through FAN for native orchids would really help to take the pressure off wild specimens.
Yeah. Having a commercial source or through FAN for native orchids will really help take pressure off wild species. Will be interested too. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And this is something that we are doing in Colombia, actually. So I have a project there that is precisely doing this, but with communities in pretty remote locations, and we see how it goes. Every culture is different, but I have the feeling that this could really work.
Is there any evidence of people still taking orchids out of the wild? I mean, or
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Shh,
Sure.
don't say it to anybody, but I think that there was a case recently in fact.
Going to be spent. Hopefully that will be spent on some of this area where these orchids are.
Yeah.
Another question. So any other questions, anybody for Tatiana? Welcome to unmute yourself. Okay. Well, like I said, the field trip, Susie, do you want to mention about carpooling? Possibly down to the Fakahatchee this Saturday?
Sure. So far we've only had one rider and we got one driver for them, but if anybody else wants to carpool, email me. I'll put my name or my email here in the chat. And, we'll just try to kind of match make you with whatever you need, a rider or a driver. But so far so good on that.
Okay. Well, the last time I did a hike with Mike Owens down there, we did get to see the vanilla orchid. So I know he'll probably take you to that. It's a beautiful, large leaves, beautiful orchid down there. And it looks like some of these orchids do bloom more in the wintertime down there. Some of the first ones you showed. So we might get to see some in bloom down there. Sean, you have a question?
Yeah, just on the Fakahatchee Strand trip, that would have been this weekend. Oh, sorry, I got a needy dog in the background. Is that an all-day trip?
We're
It's-
expecting it to be as many as 4 hours. So we've been telling people, if you want to make it a nice long day trip, or if you can stay overnight, make it a couple days. There's some other events going on nearby. But Mike Owen, he's prepared for at least 2 hours.
Okay.
So pretty much with the drive there and back, and then the trip itself, it's pretty much all day. So
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
be prepared. And Susie mentioned in the newsletter about waterproof boots, but when I found it might be easier just to take some old tennis shoes or something like that, because you will get water in your waterproof boots. So old tennis shoes work really well. Long, kind of tight fitting pants that can be wet, and bring a change of clothes depending on how chilly it is, but you'll be kind of wet pants when you get out of there, and it's nice to have some dry clothes to change into for the ride home. Just FYI. So let's see.
And
Okay.
it's worth every minute of it. It's somewhere special.
Yeah, it's really beautiful down there. So well, good. Well, thank you very much, Tatiana. And anybody doesn't have
Thank
any
you.
questions, we can leave the site open here for a little bit if anybody just wants to converse a little bit. Once everybody starts signing off, we can sign off. So if anybody wants to say hello, hello to different people. Thank you very much, Allison, for hosting, getting this going here. So
Thank you.
Sean, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a little late, but I got here for the good stuff, the orchids.
Good stuff. Thank you, Lucinda. See ya. It's a good program.
Hi.
Got off to a little.
Hey,
All right.
Ryan, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
How much snow do you have?
None right now.
Oh, okay.
No snow. Yeah, it's been a pretty warm winter here in Vermont.
But
Yeah.
no leaves,
Good.
no leaves on the trees, I guess. Right
No
now.
leaves. Yeah.
No palm trees.
No,
I think
it's okay.
we're a little spoiled down here. We get year-round, fun when it comes to plants.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just left here. He was here a long time.
Well, you appreciate them differently in the north. There's a lot of cool structure in the twigs and the branches and things, colors.
Yeah. And then you have something to look forward to, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
It's beautiful.
our laurel oaks are in full bloom right now, and some of them are already starting to leaf out already.
Yeah.
Bees are all over the laurel oak blooms right now. The trees are alive. It's almost so. It's amazing. It's early spring almost. A little early.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking here. The green I get here is mosses and lichens.
Hmm.
So
That's cool. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's all beautiful.
yeah, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm
Good.
gonna
Okay.
go. So thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you so
Tatiana.
much,
Thank you.
Tatiana.
Ready.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
I'm sorry
Have
for
a good
the
night.
challenges that you had in the beginning, but next,
Yeah, I got a bit distracted about that. I need to prepare better for that. I'm really sorry.
when you come back, you'll have it all for the next time.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Bye. See you later.
you
See
so
you
much.
around. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, okay. Well, it was a nice presentation. So nice to see everybody tonight. We're looking at hopefully trying to maybe do some in-person talks next season, in-person meetings, but we'll see how it goes. We can find a suitable facility and that we can do Zooms and everything. But one thing Allison brought up is we could just basically we could actually meet anywhere, and if the speaker's out of town, we can just kind of all watch the meetings on our phones, which would be kind of cool actually. So we can all meet as a group but then still, watch the presentation kind of amongst each other, and then the other people can sign in, from their home or whatever, and don't have to go. So we have a couple different options we're working on. So
I love that idea. We'll look like a bunch of teenagers sitting there staring at our screens.
Actually, now that you said that out loud, there is a problem with speaker feedback, but maybe we can
Oh,
have one set.
maybe
of-
everybody get headphones.
Well, that would be a good solution. Or we just let one speaker be on and ask everybody else to mute their phone or something like that, silencer. I don't know. We'll play with it. There's got to be a way of dealing with it. There's a way of dealing with everything.
we unmute you, Leah. Okay, yeah, are you unmuted, Leah?
Yeah, I'm unmuted finally.
Okay. Yes, to unmute. Okay. How do we unmute Chris?
Chris has to unmute himself. Chris M there, I'm going to press the ask to unmute button. Nothing, he might not be there. He might have just put his screen there and walked away.
There he is. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Where's your video, Chris?
Oh, my video.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you get that on there?
Here, I just
starting
asked you
my
to start
video.
your
There it
video,
is.
so maybe that'll give you a prompt
Let's
for it.
start my video.
That's to
Oh,
start.
start my video. There we go. Unable to access.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Lies.
He's in his pajamas.
Let's see. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Maybe that's it. Okay.
Which are fuzzy pink and
There
have
we
white
go.
ears, right?
Right. Yeah, that is weird. Yeah, I just thought
Let's
yeah.
see. It says, I can ask you to start your video. Does that help?
Yeah, I just
Try
pressed
that.
it. Please allow Zoom to access your camera from device. Okay. I don't know.
Are you on a phone or are you on a computer?
Tablet. On a tablet.
On a tablet? So that works
Mhm.
like a phone. So I think it's at the bottom of the screen. Or you might have to slide it to the right or the left.
Yeah, I was trying to slide it up, but I don't know. What's this one? I don't know. Oh, whoops.
Well, Chris,
No.
it should just be like at the top of your screen on your tablet where you unmute and then start video.
Yeah, I'm not. It's the screen's not working for me to slide anything around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you naked?
Well.
No.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a cover over the camera. Did you look to see if there's like a physical cover?
Got a Post-it note?
No. Yeah, there's not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We know what you look like, Chris. You could let us see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. It's all fine.
Well, by the time we're done with this year's presentations, we'll all be pros at this Zoom thing here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Won't need
Yeah.
Works pretty good, so. Well, that was a nice presentation, though. She went a little fast at the end with the orchids, but because that was really
Yeah.
cool. There's so many beautiful orchids out there, and I think so many have been poached over the years, but.
Hey, you can look at the recording and pause where you wanted to look at those longer.
Yeah.
You know what I do, Susie, when I'm watching these, I take screenshots of all the.
Oh, that's a good
screens,
idea.
And then I make a folder for the particular webinar. Eventually I force myself to throw them away because I have so many of them, but I have gone back from, like, I liked some of her mapping.
That was interesting.
And so, it sort of helps me think about things sometimes. So I save, look at them and then, toss them out later.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yep, we actually mapped a new invasive orchid locally that I don't know if Tatiana's gotten a hold of yet. I think it's still in my big pressing book if y'all wanted to see it.
You have it
Yeah,
with you?
let's see it.
Yeah.
It's a,
Where'd you
It's a-
find it?
in
Chinese one?
Terracea, actually. It's a Days Cymbidium orchid. So it's somewhat uncommon in the plant trade, but it's pretty cool. Oh God. I just remembered I have a few thousand plant photos.
Do you want me to give you share screen option?
No, I'll just throw it in the chat. I got a link to it.
We had one, I'm not sure the name of it now, in one of our cabbage palms, an invasive orchid way up in there. And, it kind of looks like the butterfly orchid to a point, but it has longer stems. And it was up in a cabbage palm that fell over, actually, luckily. So we were able to get it out. And Bruce Holt did ID it, and it was one of the invasives up here. So, but it had obviously been in that tree for a few years because it was pretty good size.
I'm not able to open that link, but that's
Yeah,
a,
content
Oh,
not-
it's because my Facebook is private because
oh, there you
Here,
are
I'll-
teasing us with these pictures.
now here you go.
You're a plant tease.
I'm sorry.
Where are you going with this?
That's Sean.
I'm just
Leads
bad
us
about
down the
Tell
garden
everybody.
path.
There we go. Now everyone can see it.
Okay, we're all
This
running
one?
to your link.
Where's
Yeah,
your
it'll
link
blow
here?
up
I'm
your
not seeing
Facebook.
your link
Oh, that's
Oh, yeah.
beautiful.
in the chat.
Oh, I want that to invade my yard.
Yeah, well, most orchids are category 2, so they don't really change the ecosystem all that much. The main thing we're worried about is them introducing new diseases.
Oh, damn. Now I've lost the whole thing.
Oh, that's
We can still see you.
I know, but I
This
couldn't
says
see you.
Says the content's not available.
We can't see Ryan
I can't
anymore,
see
but he's still his spice rack is still there.
Oh, Ryan was kind of in the dark anyway. Like,
Oh
me.
my goodness, that is pretty.
Oh, why can't I see it?
There's only so much. If it's not the link, I also uploaded the file. I can only do so much to help y'all. We're plant people, not computer people.
I just keep getting your,
try and see if I can put I've copied the picture and I'm going to try and now it
It's
did.
beautiful.
I was going to see if I can drag the picture to the app and drop the picture in as a
Where is
picture.
that one native to?
Like most of them, Indonesia.
Oh, okay.
A good chunk of them.
Okay.
It's that like archipelago, I believe. And
Yeah.
they're actually widespread throughout most of the Pacific.
Hmm.
So like you'll see them on a lot of different continents. They're very good at traveling. And I only see them exclusively growing in cabbage palm boots, which I
Interesting.
don't know if any of you all know of any native orchids that really prefer that habitat, because I personally don't. If only there was an orchid expert on here that we could talk to and ask that question.
You asked it a little too late.
Oh, well. You could probably email her.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe you'll
But-
see it
But
around.
they're finding it popping up more. Have you found it any other places besides
We've
Terracea? Or?
only found it in Tennessee, but it's all over the place. Thankfully, roads can sometimes make a pretty good barrier to spreading for plants, but it might pop up elsewhere. Orchids can be tricky. What are you, this needy dog?
It's a shame. A lot of our trust your orchids, if you look at Carl Lohr's older books and everything, a lot of those photos of the ladies' trusses and a lot of the common orchids were found in ditches and roadsides, a lot of them in Sarasota County. And it's a shame now that all those are mowed and down, that most of those have disappeared, I think.
Yeah.
But that's progress for you.
Yeah.
But did
No?
they survive in when there weren't roadsides and ditches?
The what? Yeah.
Where were they living before there were roadsides and ditches?
Just
Well,
up-
in the in the pastures next to the roads, I would imagine, in the areas adjacent to those roads, I would assume. And
Which
then
one are you
probably
talking about? The big ladies trusses?
ladies' trusses and the red one.
The big red one? There used to be an entire field up on the corner of 301 and I think it was Whitfield that was full of them certain
Mhm.
times a year. I think where the Flowers Bakery is now, I think.
Mhm.
Wow.
That was amazing. And I had them down here in my neighborhood, but of course now it's all turf and concrete.
I've
No, I
had-
mean, cattle came in, were fenced in with cattle or buildings, and then they were limited to the roadsides, and then those are mowed, so they're pretty much gone, I guess. So
This, well, last year I saw a, down in Warmill Springs, there, the sequoia, there was like literally, I mean, I looked at it and I had to take a double take because I thought it was the paintbrush that's up in the prairies. Of course, it does those don't occur down here, but it was a sequoia and it was just full of them. It literally was between Tamiami Trail, let's see, north of Ortiz, and that little, I can't even know what the little road is that runs parallel on the north side of Tamiami Trail there, but it was in one of those little lots.
When
And
did you
just
see
full
it,
of them.
Chris?
Let's see, when was it blooming?
It's in the spring, isn't it?
Let's say, I think it was spring. I was checking on these FWC contractors who were removing sediment out of the Warmill Springs
Mm.
for more room for the manatees. Yeah, well, it was, I guess it was, well, it had to be after March. So I may have been early summer, maybe June, maybe May or June.
Thanks.
I've had good luck with my aquatic orchids, the habenaria, like repens, especially in a lot of areas, even like nasty, disgusting retention ponds. I've had good luck getting them in. So, no, anywhere can be orchid habitat, but it's mostly about just not spraying and not developing everything.
where have you gotten the heaven areas?
Oh, I've even seen them in, surprisingly, mowing isn't as bad for a lot of this native habitat as you think. I've seen them in a lot of mowed like retention pond borders. I've seen them in mixed floating weed mats. I've seen them in, roadside ditches. A lot of these wetland orchids just, they spread through water. If there's water, they're fine. And it doesn't matter if it's a little polluted, they like it. I don't care. We could lose every epiphytic orchid in the state and we'd still have 1,000 habenarias. At least there's some natives.
I saw some on the bird count. I was up in Lakewood Ranch behind some shopping center next to a retention pond. It was at the woods margins. They looked